Today is with me Andromeda Anarchia, an artist of one. She is here to talk all about La Suspendida, a jazz metal opera. Welcome, Andromeda. Thank you for being here. And how are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very fine, thank you. How about you? You good?
Having a good day. Having
Good.
a nice cup of coffee to talk with you.
What time do you have over there where you are?
11 each
11.
morning. Yes,
Nice. For me, it's 8 in the evening here in Europe.
quite the difference. So good night for you.
Beg your pardon?
Good evening or good night. What's the
Yes,
correct?
not night yet. It's a bit too early after the
Okay,
after our talk.
okay, yeah, yeah. I will try to make it short, but just cover about everything that we need to do. I guess the first thing is to unpack Andromeda Anarchia, what Andromeda Anarchia is, because it's quite the enigma. I don't see much interviews on the internet, and I
Mhm,
think people like me are very interested in your work and your formation as an
mhm.
opera singer, which also works with extreme music. And
Yes.
even before that, your interest with dramaturgy and this interest in your life and this art form. How did this come about?
That's a good question. A long one to answer, like a long answer. Well, let me say it like this. I was really, since I was starting to walk, being able to speak, I was fascinated by everything I can do with my voice.
Hmm.
And I was lucky. I had parents who were both very musical, not professional musicians, but very passionate music fans, and they were listening to all kinds of music, and my mom always sang with us. We had several instruments in our house where we children were allowed to play around on them, and I was always completely into music as a kid, completely obsessed. I also had this funny imagination as a little girl. I can sing with two voices, just with myself, if my mom doesn't have time to sing,
Okay.
canons with me or something like that. So um, I was just fascinated by all the sounds I can do. I was imitating all the singers I heard, trying to copy what they were doing in all kinds of styles. And then when I became a teenager and I became more like dedicated to learning singing, like in a more serious way,
Hmm.
my mom, she said, well, you should go and have your voice classically trained, because that's a very solid foundation. And during that time, I was not really listening to classical music I loved classical music, but I was not really so much into opera. And then I just started being super naive, and I was like, oh my, what's this, to sing like that with that sound? It doesn't feel natural to me at first. But I had an absolutely fantastic uh, professor who really triggered some curiosity in me, and who encouraged me to follow through, but to also take it seriously. And he was also the one that suggested to me to do this professionally.
Hmm.
And I studied that for 7 years, but
Wow.
I've never felt like wanting to become a traditional opera singer. I love all these operas, but my voice was still young, and you have to grow when you have I have a dramatic voice type, so that means I have a very strong and loud voice, right? I'm a dramatic coloratura soprano, so I have a loud, very high voice, but also agile. But you cannot, when you start to do that, you cannot push yourself into the dramatic voice. You have to take your patience to grow into that. So the
Hmm.
literature I was allowed to sing back then was not the one my voice could do later on. So I was a bit, yeah, I felt like it's not fitting to me yet. Also, I was so much into progressive rock music. I was a lot
Okay.
into um, freaky music, like music from John Zorn, experimental music, avant garde music, jazz music. And also, I wanted to compose my own music. And for a
Right.
traditional opera singer, that's not normally the case, you know?
Hmm.
And then my professor started to show me operettas, and even the Drei Groschen opera, or the Three Penny opera, I think in English, by Kurt Weill. And that's what I loved. I was like, oh my God, that's the roles I want to play. I don't want to play a cute, pretty girl singing bel canto all the time. I want to sing everything, you know? And then my professor, of course, he was a bit more traditional. He was like, no, no, you will ruin your voice. You should not do that. And I was like, nah, man, thank you so much for everything, but I have to move on, you know? and 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 I went to the jazz department, started to sing jazz music, and I enjoyed it a lot from a how to make music within a totally different, with a totally different approach. I love this ad hoc playing with music, and with other people. It's very fast and also spontaneous, and I loved that. But from a singing point of view, I felt like, wow, I have that high voice with those top notes. And in jazz, normally the female singers all have mezzo soprano voices or alto voices, what we consider as sensual and soft and like with jazz, what we often associate with jazz singing, that's not the quality of my voice at all. I don't sing low. So, and then I was like, I'm so used to sing loud and I can't now and I have to sing low, but it feels weird. And then I was like, what kind of music allows me to sing high and to sing strong? Well, that's metal, right? Heavy metal. And also, I was always intrigued by all those raspy sounds and distortions on the voice, like everything my professor said, no, don't do it. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that. Give it to me. And then maybe I should come back to my childhood real
Yeah.
quick to show you a bit better what I mean. When I was a kid, I started with classical guitar and then switched to piano. And when my first piano teacher, she was actually a church organ player. And I had the opportunity to perform in front of people when I was 10 years old. And it was in a church. And I wanted to play that little performance on the church organ, and she taught me how to do that. And until now, this was really an experience which was very meaningful for my path in music, because when you are at the church, it's huge, right? You have those pipes, the sound is huge, and you have all these stops, that you can push and pull to change the sound. And when I became older, I've never forgotten that image. And I was like, man, when I sing, the voice for me is like a church organ. There is a passage I want to sing like bel canto. Sometimes I want to scream. Sometimes I push. And so I wanted to write music that gives me the platform to do everything I want, not just one style, But metal was the one music that I'm passionate about because it's so intense, because there is such a huge diversity of how it can be played, like very much in your face rock to very complicated, progressive, even classically inspired or even jazz inspired approaches, and I just loved that. It was like this amazing playground to play with, and also I can do with the voice whatever I want. And well, that's what I wanted to do. I was listening to John Zorn's Moonchild with Mike Patton, Joey Barron, and Trevor Dunn, and I was like, wow, these guys are amazing. That's exactly what I want to do, to be really, intense, spontaneous, wild. And then also, I mean, I'm sure you know her. I'm a big admirer of Nina Hagen. You know her, the German singer?
No.
Nina Hagen is very known for being the first one exactly who combined classical singing with punk and rock music in the 80s and 90s. You should check her out, man. You will love her. She's amazing. She has a huge range. She's actually an alto voice, but she has a 4 octaves range, has an incredible high notes, and she's an amazing songwriter, also really funny and theatrical. And man, I just love everything she sang. Like, she's just an overall artistic person and super creative with the voice. And so I felt like that's what I want to do, something like what Mac Patton does, or Nina Hagen does, or Niels Frichdal from Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum, for example.
Okay.
I just love these versatile singers. And of course, I loved Angela Gossow. Like,
Mm.
of Arch Enemy, when she was one of the first women doing those heavy, those great, growls. And I was like, man, I want to do exactly that. But well, combine it with other things.
Right.
And
Right.
so I did my kind of progressive rock projects, or I did some crazy experimental, improvised things like in Moonchild. And I bumped into people who wanted to do the same, like the Laurent from La Suspendida,
Mm-hmm.
or Kenny, from Imperial Triumphant, who is also with La Suspendida, and Zach, with who is in Imperial and with whom I have Folterkammer.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we all kind of, are connected in either or the other way. And so after me just floating a bit everywhere, trying out different things, all of a sudden there was this funny meeting in New York with Zach
Mm.
and Penny. And when Zach showed me around in Manhattan, because I was there for the first time, and then we were just, chatting about music. And then he was like, man, you're classically trained, right? I said, yeah, but that's really in the back, like that's a
Okay.
long
Okay.
time ago. And he said, well, do you want to do guest vocals for our next Imperial Triumphant album?
Mm.
Sure, yeah, I will do it. And I would love to. And then he said, and can you do growls? I said, yeah. And he said, can you do the both? And I said, well, let's give it a try, right? So it was for Vile Luxury, that
Yeah.
album. And one day I received a call while I was in Switzerland. He said, now you need to hit the studio. Now we need to have those tracks being recorded. And I was like, sure, let's do it. And that's when it all started to become like a thing, to mix metal screams specifically with bel canto.
Okay.
In metal there are a lot of singers who sing like classically inspired, but it's not really bel canto singing.
Mm.
And so I was like, oh man, for black metal that's actually really cool. and
Yeah.
and then Zach was like, man, we should dedicate a whole project to that, to Folterkammer. And then at the same time, to swing back to La Suspendida, to have the bridge. I mean, I was working with Laurent before. He was
Yeah.
working as a basis for my project, Andromeda Anarchia, Dark Matters. And we also, I wrote some lyrics for his projects. We all were, and he asked me, man, I want to have a New York trio. I said, you should hit up Kenny Grahowski and Ed from Jersey Band, because
Oh.
you guys, you seem very similar to me, and I think you would be a great fit. So he contacted them, and that was what was Kilter. And then they invited me as a guest vocalist, and Laurent, who started off as a classical guitar player, and Kenny was classically trained also, and Ed too. So we all had a classical background. We all love jazz, and we all have our passion for metal, and we
Right.
all want to mix it. So they invited me as a guest vocalist, and as much as we try to combine classical music with black metal for Folterkammer, there was also this ingredient of jazz with Kilter. And then Laurent and I had a conversation. I was watching a video of the Canadian Growlers Choir.
Okay.
Dude, those guys are so good. That's amazing that it exists. And I said to Laurent, more like a joke, man, I would like to write an opera like for a choir like this, not just, classical singers, but like for growls, because that sounds so epic. Opera is an homage, a dedication for the love of voices. It's
Okay.
made for voices, but why should it only be bel canto? It can be growls too. Imagine that impact of hearing an opera, and then all of a sudden you have those growls on stage from a choir, like
Mm.
whoa.
Yes.
and And then I was like, man, there should be an opera which is more modern, like really trying to combine worlds and to have a choir like this and the singer that goes crazy. And then he was like, okay, I can do that.
Right, right, right.
And he contacted Ed, and Ed has he has a doctor in composition. Um, and um, and so they were like, okay, let's do it. So Kilter, Kenny, Ed, and Laurent wrote a whole opera. Can you
Wow,
imagine?
wow.
And then it was clear it will be a mix of jazz, metal, and classical music. And it's tricky to find people who play everything, you know.
Yeah.
And it was a very long process. They wrote things, they scrapped it, they wrote things new, they changed stuff all the time. And we were like guinea pigs. We had to try out what works and what does not. And then Laurent was also like, man, we need somebody who writes a libretto for us.
Mm.
And then I had somebody in mind, because there is this drummer, James Jones is his name, and he saw me with Kilter in New York. And he told William Berger, who is the main host for the Metropolitan Opera in New York, he wrote to him, man, there is this girl, and she sings classical, like operatic, but she's also doing metal screams at the same time. You should check her out. And he's a guy who is an expert in opera. He knows all the opera singers in the world. I like everybody, those stars, you know.
Okay.
And at the same time, that's a funny thing, he's a total metalhead. And he loves everything where music, classical music, and metal is mixed. So
Okay.
he contacted me. We had a few chats, and then when Laurent told me we need somebody who writes a libretto, I was like, man, you should ask William Berger,
Yeah.
because he's also an author and he writes books about operas. Maybe he could also write an opera, you know,
Mm.
like the lyrics for the opera.
Mm.
And William was so much into it, he just accepted, and he wrote
Wow.
a whole libretto.
Wow.
So we have this opera expert who wrote this libretto for us,
Yes.
and he has a funny background. William Berger, he has a part of him is European, one part of him is Mexican, one part of him is, I think, American. I don't know. Like,
Okay.
he's like this multilingual person, knowing so much music, knowing so many languages, and that became like a part of La Suspendida,
Mm.
since La Suspendida is also a very international project, you
Yes.
know. So then, of course, we had to ask that Growlers Choir if they would be interested, and they said yes. I mean, how crazy is that?
How could they not? You know, the opportunity for something like this is very unique.
Oh man, it was so good, and they are so amazing. That's like that's so good what they are doing. And then, of course, there had to be strings, and they asked Seven Sons, this metal classic string quartet from New York, of Earl Manine. Really cool. These guys are amazing, and of course, they also joined in. So it was like, wow,
Yeah.
everything is falling into place, and this is
Yeah.
really going to happen, as it looks like. And Laurent and Ed, they took over the main production work to organize everything. I mean, imagine the schedules, everything to rehearse, to have workshop concerts, to see what is working, what is not working, with suspended dancers in the air. Everything still under construction, but we already tried to perform stuff, and recording in between, you know, for the EP, for the album. It was so much work, and what goes into organization, never knowing if you are able to finance everything. That's just
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So that's how it all came about, and that's part of my story. So what I'm doing now, who's Andromeda Anarchia?
Mm.
Andromeda Anarchia is me trying to do everything I can do with my voice,
Mm.
and to write them, or to find composers, or to compose my own music that gives me a platform to express everything my voice can express. Of course, it has to be for the music. Not everything fits to all the songs, but just to have different possibilities, different playgrounds to play around with all kinds of sounds the voice can do. So that's the work I want to do with Folterkammer, with La Suspendida, with Dark Matters. With Dark Matters, I compose my own music, and with the others, with Folterkammer, I also compose. And with La Suspendida, I leave it to Kilter.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yes, they are. It's Ed, Kenny, and Laurent who are the composers of La Suspendida.
Okay, let me try to summarize it all. So your introduction to classical training was almost accidentally. You were offered the chance, and
Yes,
then
but later on, I mean, it was I had music theory lessons. I remember
okay,
that there was
okay,
this one teacher, and he was passionate about contemporary classical music, like Neue Musik, also like more modern classical music from the last century. And that really caught my attention. I was like, wow, that's so good. You know, Kurtak, Ligeti, Stravinsky, all of this, and Berg. And I was like, whoa, okay, that's what I love. But I also wanted to write my own music, and I always had a passion for progressive music, you know, complex music too, and also really loud, strong music like what we can do with metal.
yes,
I need that intensity. That's just me, you know, and so just to stay in opera for me was not an option. So yes, it was a bit like an accident, but a good one
yeah,
because I took a lot from it. And the next accident was Zach and Laurent individually from each other, who told me, "Man, you have a great classical voice." And
yeah.
you should just use it more often again and to combine it with different styles. So here I am. That's what I do. So that's an accident, one after the other.
I mean, I would guess it's not every day that you find a classical training singer which also likes to play or to sing black metal or extreme voices, you know?
I think the younger generations of singers, they are a bit more open. There are more and more people trying things out, and I think that's great because that's we should at least try things out. But of course, if you want to follow through with something very traditional, like if you want to be a traditional opera singer and you want to follow through with a career, focus on that. Do
Okay.
when if you see, oh yes, I did my time, or yes, I am now I want to try something else, then you can start. But if you want to be sincere about classical singing, it's better to really focus on that for the moment and wait. But if you are like me, you are into crossover things, fusion, and you love to be experimental, and it doesn't matter whether, because you're not performing at the Metropolitan Opera,
Right.
you can do that, and it's a lot of fun. You know, there is no secrets about the voice. It's just play around with it and see what happens with it, and then just try to figure out how to do it healthy, in a healthy way, so you can do it for a long time. That's the only rule I have with myself. My limit is where I feel it's damaging, you know, because
Okay.
I want to sing until I die, and I
Yeah.
hope that still goes a while until I die. So if I'm allowed to become old, I want to still have my voice in good shape, you know, and so I'm very cautious with technical things. I'm a bit nerdy with that, and it's important to me to make things healthy for the voice. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you didn't feel like spending as much time as needed to take this as a career in, you know, the traditional way as an operatic singer. You felt like defying the traditions of this field and discover your taste in heavy music and all of that. So of course this was like a natural pathway for you to travel. Yes, I discovered you years ago through your collaborations with Imperial Triumphant. By then I was like, okay, this is interesting. I don't remember listening to anything similar before. You know, thank you for that reference. I didn't know or that artist. I was more like where my point of reference were like something like Sopora Eternus, Diamanda Galas.
Yes, of course.
Um, but I will search for her. But yeah,
Nina, yes,
yeah.
yes,
Then
please do.
then then of course came Faltacama, and I was
Mhm.
like, okay, she actually has interested in combining and merging these two
Yeah.
worlds with black metal. Very interesting approach, I would say. Lots of things to discuss there, but I will bypass it off the conversation for now, for a
Yeah.
future
Now it's
conversation.
Vendida.
Yes, yes, La Suspendida. And well, Kilter, as you mentioned, came later, and now La Suspendida, which of course feels like a culmination or combination of all these things that
Mhm.
Andromeda Anarchia has embodied for us in the public eye since we learned from you. And this feels like more of your element, if I will say.
Mm-mm-mm. Well, I think La Suspendida, from a musical and from a singing point of view, that's the most difficult thing I've ever done
Mm,
as a musician. Musically, it's extremely challenging. It's very difficult music, and from the singing too, because you need to be in control at the same time. You have to be different and sound wise with the screams, like what the choir is doing. So I had to the role was tailored for my voice, for what I do as a singer. Like in opera, it used to be like this always, that the role was, a composer liked the singer and he wrote her an opera. And they did that with me too. They wrote something that is made for how I like to combine things. But at
mm.
the same time, this opera didn't exist before. And it's a story which is based on a true story.
The story is, wow, surreal.
Crazy. We can talk about that later.
Yeah, yeah.
Then, but it's like I have to play a woman who died.
Mm,
How do I do that with the voice? Because I play her already being dead, you know.
yes.
So who is that Maria Elena? How can I be her? How can I grow into her? It takes a long time to grow into a role. Even the famous roles like Carmen, or or Tosca, you it takes, even for the most amazing superstar opera singers, it takes years to grow into a role. Even they performed it already many times wonderfully, but many of them, you would hear them say, man, I'm still learning, I'm still growing into her, or the character you play. And for Maria Elena, it's the same. And I don't have Maria Callas to listen to how she sang Maria Elena. Doesn't exist. For Carmen, I can listen to other singers how they do that, I can have an inspiration. But for La Suspendida, there's nothing. There is a
Nothing.
music which has never been made like this, in this combination. There is a whole new story, and I have to find a way of also showing respect to the true Maria Elena, because she existed, and to protect her dignity, you
Mm,
know. And that, I take that very seriously. And man, really feel still like a little baby trying to grow into Maria Elena. It's
okay.
a huge work, huge. And yes, that's what I mean. It's, from the musical point of view, it's a very difficult project. And from the performance aspect, from growing into a role, it's another challenge, like, just really difficult. But also, of course, it's a lot of fun, because I'm learning so much. But um, it's hard work, very
Yes.
intense hard work to do this. With Fault Karma, for example, it's more simple. It's more like, you
Fun.
can be on stage and you can just,
Yes.
yeah. And but with La Suspendida, it's all, every note is composed. There is
Right. Oof.
no free jazz, nothing there. Everything is composed. And you have to be with everybody. You always have to be so present for like 80, 90 minutes in a row. There is no other singer. There is a choir, and there is me. It's a monodrama. So I have so many lyrics, so many songs which are so complex, which I have
Yes.
to have by heart. It's that's nuts, man. That's
Yes.
just
Yes, it
nuts.
is.
I remember when I was on tour, in Germany, I said to Laurent, why exactly do we do that? It's But yes, once you are on stage and you have the, I mean, the, I'm sorry, but the musicianship is so good.
Yes.
I love Laurent and Kenny and Ed and everybody involved in that project. They are, I was a fan of all of them way before I met them and played music with them. So it's always like I'm that fan who is on stage with all my heroes, you know, like
Right. Right.
wow. And that no, that's, they are so supportive, and even when yeah, there are moments where you really struggle because you have to figure out how to do things. Everybody's trying to help everybody, so the mood is very uplifting
Hmm.
and helping, and that's that. Yeah, that's, so it's good. Even it's hard, it's something very constructive and positive. And man, I learned so much also about that story with Maria Elena and Tanzler and
So pretty much as you mentioned, this merchant of three worlds is untamed land. So I would imagine that it was very difficult to come by. Of course, I think Kilter serves as a background for this music. You know, I don't think we as an audience have would have appreciated the same without having the experience of Kilter before. You know, and many artists that came recently. For example, I saw like an experiment with a classical ensemble and a growler, the vocalist of Pyron, Doug Moore. I don't know you know him, but you know what I'm saying is that music and the performs are almost like a language in development collectively, you know. So
yes.
the point of reference from which the audience can approach this music and appreciate it has also like been in developed, you know, over the years. What I'm saying is like, was it difficult for the audience to you know, with different backgrounds? I don't know, opera, jazz, and metal to receive and appreciate this performance. What was your
um
experience that there?
so far the feedback was amazing.
Mm,
Not kidding. We had 1 week in Long Island City when we had like workshop concerts. So during that time, the opera was not finished yet,
mm,
and we met, we rehearsed, we even had suspended dancers in the air.
yeah.
And there, for the last 3 days, we had three concerts scheduled. They were all sold out, and the third one was completely overbooked. And we
Wow.
had three times standing ovation of the
Oh.
people. And even the organizers, they were obviously overwhelmed by how many people came to see the show. It was obviously not expected. And then the audience was mixed, people from opera because of William Berger, right, from the
Mm,
Metropolitan Opera, people from Broadway, people from jazz, many people from the metal scene. And everybody seemed, it seemed like everybody was moved, and they came to talk to us. And even I remember I had a short conversation with Kenny. He said he never saw such an eclectic audience and everybody reacting so positively. And then we performed the premiere in Paris, and that was twice. We had two performances, and also now in Germany it was in different venues, like some very jazz venues, some more punk rock metal venues. But the perception was amazing. It was, the feedback is enormous. I think it's always like this with opera, or I think also with music in general. The best thing you can do is to go and see it live. But
mm,
with opera, it's especially true because it's a whole story. It's a world. You have to feel that, those big sounds, that that whole image, that force, that is the whole story. You know, I asked a Swiss journalist to come to the premiere in Paris, and he said to me, "Oh, I'm not into free jazz." I said, "That's not free jazz." Everything is composed. Oh, but you know me. I like power metal, everything with melodic metal with lots of melodies and stuff. And I said, "Just come, open up your mind, just let it happen to you."
yes.
And he came and he wrote a little review, and he wrote that his chin dropped once and it stayed there for the whole show. And he wrote to me later and he said, "Man, thank you for pushing me to come and see that, because when you experience that live, that's just enormous." And he really enjoyed it, and that I was happy about that, because normally he's totally into metal and he loves classical music too, and jazz is not so much his thing, but all of a sudden he opened up towards this experience. And I think maybe that's what can move people, is when they come and see the show live, because that's a whole different thing. Like when you see the people and the costumes, and you see the musicians on stage, which is normally not the case in opera, but you
Mhm.
see them work, they are part of the imagery. You see the paintings for this opera, which were made by Julie Grahowski, Kenny's wife. She has she did all the story paintings, and
Yeah.
you have them projected everywhere. It's so beautiful. You will see that on the album. The album
Okay.
artwork is done by her. That's just
Mm.
amazing.
I don't consider myself a person who enjoys jazz in the traditional way. I like the jazz that is experimental. I haven't been exposed to opera, so I appreciate this experiment or project as someone who enjoys metal, first.
Mhm, mhm,
Um, so far I have only listened to this work once,
mhm.
so any opinion or take is just my first impression. I don't want to contaminate
That's
it with a
good.
second or
That's
third
fresh.
listening, but several times while listening to this, it blew me away. You mentioned the journalist that whose jaw dropped. I gasped a few times. I was listening to the music while reading the libretto you mentioned.
William Berger.
Yes.
Mhm,
um it has everything. There's a lot to discuss there, but I
mhm.
laugh quite a few times, with the I will say that this has comedy somehow. It has tragedy. It's a story about love,
Everything. Yeah.
maybe twisted love,
Mhm,
vile so lost. Sorry,
mhm,
lost so vile.
mhm,
Um, everything.
mhm.
And well, I want to ask you about your favorite parts, or maybe the
Oh,
most challenging parts to sing for you, because
yes.
uh, a few
I have to.
moments. I have a few moments that I can pick any favorite, but there were these moments like when I think, okay, Andromeda is the only person who can do something like this, combining all these things together. Uh, of course, it's challenging because I was reading the lyrics, and the
Mhm.
the 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 changes, the modulations, intonation is very complex,
Very
very,
much. Yeah.
very, very complex. So yeah, your favorite moments or things to do here.
Whoa. I mean, I have to say, as I said, it's a growing process. And
Mm,
when you have a recording session, it's always not finished yet. You know, you're still in the process of learning, but you just have like a picture. When you have your whole life, and it's one continuum, and you take a picture, it's just from 1 second of that whole continuum. When you have a project, a band, an album, whatever, and you do a recording, the recording is just one little moment of the
right,
whole work.
right.
And you can, and I say that to myself too, because sometimes you put a lot of pressure, to onto yourself to make things perfect, but you have to let go of that and say, hey, it's a process. You are in
Mm,
this right now. It's a momentum. And there are moments on the recording which today I would change a little bit, like as far as I can, because it's all written down. But there is always a way how to modulate and to play and to act. And there are things which already changed since that momentum.
mm,
And well, the fun parts for me are all the argument parts. Like when
mhm.
there is the choir and me, bah, 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 bah,
Yes,
bah,
yes,
and they tell, yeah, you have to, your love here with that guy is delusional. You have to come to join us. You are dead and you are part of the dead now. So come and join us. And she's like, no, I don't want.
yes. I enjoyed that part very much.
True. And so they have this big argument thing going on, and that's the theme that always comes again. They have several arguments, right? And I love these moments. Also, this direct interaction with the choir, also on stage,
Yeah.
because sometimes they are standing around me or we move through each other. That's really cool. And also the visual things of the eyes, all the girls and the boys in the Growlers choir, they all have those intense looks, and you look at each other during the performance. And well, we do that with the voices too on the recording, but it's more abstract, right? So these are the most fun moments, like, because there is interaction. It's not just me, singing, but honestly, I created a relationship to every tune, to every aria on in this opera. I also love that uh, My Corpse, Your Dungeon, for the life momentum. That's a very powerful piece. It's only screams, and in the very end, there is a coloratura top note section where I have to sing super high in the 6th octave. And this one, for the life one, is really powerful and strong and totally badass. And so these momentums, the strong ones, those are the ones I just love to perform a lot. But then there are also those delicate pieces, like the lullaby at the end,
Mm.
or the Song of the Countess, when it's more about clean singing, or the Ballad of Maria Elena. For me, the Ballad of Maria Elena is the most difficult piece musically, rhythmically. It's incredible, and melodically. It's so chromatic and it's so complex. The meter changes so often. It's just nuts. And the lyrics are nuts too, because they are super intense. There is a lot of stuff to remember and to say, of course, to play. It's so much fun, but it's really
It,
hard to access this one.
it's funny that you mentioned this song as the most challenging one, because I would think that this has the most natural flow in
Oh,
your
please.
in your I mean in your area,
Mhm.
like it doesn't demand so much as other songs, with the contrast of voices. But yeah, please continue.
I think that in the beginning you have that flows, thank you so much. And it's more like a jazz ballad.
Mm,
I hate to be rude. And then there are these beautiful floating chromatic melodies here and there. But then all of a sudden it makes doof, and she turns into that person who wants to take control over her fate, and
yeah,
she's growling, and then all of a sudden it goes into that middle thing. It's the music gets more complex, the story gets more complex, but the melody is still written in a floating way over that intensity and complexity going on down there, with the instruments. And then it goes into the screams again, and then the argument results out of this. So there's a lot of movements all of a sudden. In the beginning it's like an illusion of, oh, everything is calm and but then all of a sudden comes this huge wave and swept, it just takes you,
yeah,
and then you're struggling in the story, as also when you are the listener, I guess. That's something that takes your attention, in a more intense way. Before that, it's all floating.
yeah, yeah. In my experience, where the album or the opera is getting more intense is from the tenth song, um, song of the
Oh,
countess.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but
That there I have to. She's like impersonating somebody else.
mm, yeah,
So I was told to not sing bel canto,
okay,
but to sing very modern and very different than for the rest of the opera, because she's trying to be the countess.
yeah,
So, and it's a shift, but it's a very, to me, I can, for example, Ed, he also wrote music for Broadway productions, for
okay,
musicals. He's super versatile as a musician, and you can hear that in Song of the Countess. To me, it has something musical style, like it's super catchy.
yes, it is, it actually is.
Yes, and very theatrical too. It's a
Yeah.
lot of fun to sing. Oh, so many dresses, so that's a lot of fun to sing. You know, it's super expressive and overly dramatic. But since she's also acting, you know, so that's I can do that. But yeah, in other parts, she's herself, not impersonating somebody. So it's different. I also like that tune. Uh, I have all the work titles in my head, not the final ones. um, there is this, you know, after she died the second time, you have
Okay.
the your there is afterglow, right? You have the my corpse, your dungeon, right? So that's this extreme momentum where Tansler died.
Mm-hmm.
And then she all of a sudden feels again, whoops, something changed. And then she's like, what happens now? And then comes a new piece. Then when she said, why, you know, and she realizes, why is it happening to me over and over again? And then you can hear she screams, and all of a sudden the music, the melody of, I have to sing super low for my range. Like, but wa da da dee da da dee da 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 da. So I'm super low. And then the voice travels higher and higher and higher in the melody. You remember that piece?
Yes.
And in the end, she sings like, I am la suspendida, the genre of war. You know, it's like it's a
Yeah.
crazy tune. And then she collapses again, and she goes. It's written. The melody is just crazy, and the complexity of the piece too. It's like the that huge momentum where all the motifs of the opera come together
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
build up into a volcano. You know,
That that
that's so intense.
that feels like a moment of all coming together, where
Yes.
a person or gender of one, I don't know what exactly are you saying, but
Mhm.
in this song, I think is my favorite moment, where you
Ah,
reply to the Shades. Their song "Wears Me Out." Denzel Tansler
ah,
come back. I laugh at that point
yeah,
because
me too. On the singing, this one is a challenging one because, as you can see, I have to go through several registers. It's like registers. It's for me being a soprano, it's very hard to sing low.
Mm,
I'm lucky I have a big range, but I don't have a lot of strength down there in my sound. You know, it's not raw like an alto singer, and but I have to sing those notes. You know, and then it builds up, and it's done in such a uh, tricky way. You know, it's like you have to pay attention because you can easily move out of these chromatic shifts,
yeah,
and the intonation can easily go wherever. and and then the mood changes all the time. So while the melodies are building towards the upper registers, she has several mood shifts, right? And then all of a sudden she has that, I want to fight again, I am la suspendida, and then she collapses again, and then she's completely desperate also. And what it does with the voice is like, I wonder how my brain is doing that, because you have to activate different muscles for different
mm,
techniques, right? And I have to combine so many different technical things during that one piece, which is after I sang almost the whole opera, you know?
yeah, yeah,
I have to save a lot for that momentum, to because they Ed wrote that melody when it goes up to the sixth octave again in the end. So it
hmm,
was like really yikes. So I have to be careful in the opera before I'm coming to that point, and then there's this huge peak, you know.
yes,
And yeah, I love this one because, as you said, it represents the whole opera. Like, it combines everything again,
yeah, yeah,
and it's a climax momentum, of course.
yes.
And then yes, it's it's challenging, but also, of course, therefore it's a lot of fun to sing it. Oh, I'm sorry for
And
this.
you mentioned earlier in this conversation that you wouldn't damage your voice, but but I don't know how so if you are doing this sort of thing, you know. Um, especially doing a tour, playing this
Mm.
opera?
Actually, it was just a really nice experience because we played um, the opera for one whole week. Like
Okay.
we had rehearsals, and then we had 5 shows. And I've always felt good, but it was a long process of discovering how I can do exactly which kind of technical approaches I have to take in my singing, what kind of sounds, which allow me to sing the whole opera without fatigue, without damage, and to play it the next days too. I also performed the full opera twice in Paris in one day for a video production, and after that for the concert. And I will do that. We will do that again in New York in March. We have a double show on one day on the 12th of March at New Blue. And I was surprised because even after that week, and I mean, some metal venues, people smoke. It's not good for the voice. It's not the best, thing. So you don't really sleep well sometimes, depending on the tour, where you land. Sometimes you can sleep well, sometimes you don't. But no matter what happens, I need to know. I need to be safe that I will not lose the voice.
Mhm.
And so it took me a lot of experimenting to find the sounds that sound good, but also work without becoming tired. So
Yes.
I don't do all the things I could do. I leave them. I just take what is necessary for this opera to be performed, to sound good, and to maintain a healthy voice. Because for the voice, I mean, if you make mistakes with the technique, the voice will show you very fast. You will cough, you will have pain, and you will automatically stop at some point because it's just not working. So that means bad technique. But what is much more important to maintain your voice is to rest the voice, to not talk, to not sing. One of the best vocal exercises is just to shut up
Mm.
and say nothing. So when you sing the full opera, or you have to sing it twice, you have to make sure that you save your voice whenever you can. You just do a quick warm up. You don't overstrain, If you talk all the time, and well, I'm like that all the time, but
Appreciate that.
I can talk about food all day long, about cats, about music. Don't get me started. But when I'm on tour, it changes. I feel like inside of me, I'm like, I'm calming down. I prefer my own rooms and everything. I withdraw sometimes from everybody just to not be tempted to talk too much, to rest, and just to make a quick warm up to check how is my voice doing today? What can I do? What can I not do today? Because the voice changes all the time. And then I just focus on the performance and I calm down again. And after that week, I noticed, oh, that actually works. That's a
Yes.
good experience. And also, when I did the whole opera twice in Paris, I couldn't even believe I could do that because normally opera singers, they have small breaks in between performances to rest their voices, in fact. And when you are a rock band and you are on tour in that kind of world, it's not the same. You have to perform every night. So
Right.
yeah, it will be
And
funny with Folder Comer too. I will see how that works because it's
yes,
different.
yes. As I
Yeah,
mentioned before, that's a whole other conversation that I'm hoping to
totally,
to discuss
totally.
later in a few weeks.
But what you mean, what you said with keeping it healthy, I think, I mean, I'm singing since a long time. I did all the mistakes you can do. I'm sure
Okay.
I will do many more. But that's also, it's good to make mistakes because then you know where are your limits. And
Yeah.
I've learned to control my voice big times. I did that. I trained for so long, and when I feel like I could have a coach looking into what I'm doing, I'm doing that. And I'm teaching too, so I have all kinds of perspectives onto the voice work.
Yeah.
And I think that helps with this opera, because if I would be like when I started to do metal screams, man, I did so many mistakes. And I was like, oh, my voice, it hurts. Oh, my professor was right. But I was like, no, so many guys do that for so many years and they have nothing, so it should be possible. So I continued until I figured it out. But and then you have to do the work, because you have to make the work as effortless as possible. The
Right.
more you put strength into it, the more damage you cause. You have to do a technique that allows you to not overstrain all the time, and that takes a lot of time to discover. And it took me a long time to discover the sound for Maria Elena, for that opera. But I mean, this opera production, when did it start?
A year ago, almost
2 years ago,
two
two,
years
3
ago.
years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, the first beginnings of writings and meetings and stuff, if I remember correctly. The first ideas, and then and then we started to practice things. The music was changed again, so it was a longer time. But we started to perform like 1.5 years ago, or 1 year ago, something like this. But I mean, I performed some of the tunes already earlier, because we wanted
Mm.
to try out things. So, but with the whole cast, it was a year ago when we performed it. But
Mm.
yeah, so I had a lot of time to grow into this and to find out the good techniques without hurting me. But yeah, I mean, you can only it also takes luck, because you can have a flu or a cold, and then that can really screw up the whole thing.
Would you do it again? Another cycle of La Suspendida, a different opera?
A whole new opera, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, I guess so. For now, I have a lot of things to do with La Suspendida. It's very fulfilling, but of course, yes,
So,
because I love to do new things, and to grow and to learn new things.
well, again, La Suspendida is really, really fascinating.
Mm,
When I learned about this project a year ago, more or
mhm.
less, I was excited to listen to this, because back then it was only a live experience thing. But the music is, I don't know how to describe it, honestly. Me and a couple of friends will try to comment on it.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. I'm curious.
but there's a lot to find out here, and well, congratulations for
Thank
for this creation. Is beautiful, mind blowing. Have you
you.
watched or seen SNL sketches?
The
Have you watched SNL sketches, Saturday Night Live sketches?
No, no,
No?
no.
Okay. So there's one character here, or used to be a character here called Stefan,
Okay.
um, which used to announce like a sketch thing, shows or gigs in New York happening, like the most crazy ones. And La Suspendida feels like one thing that Stefano will announce, this very unique. It feels like Frankenstein meets Phantom
Oh,
of the Opera meets La Llorona. Really,
oh.
really different things merging together here.
Can you email that to me, so I can find
Yeah,
it? And
yeah,
oh,
sure,
cool.
sure.
Thank you.
It's a comedy thing, but
Okay, I like I like comedy. I like satire. I love cabaret. Everything. Hit me.
perfect, perfect. Okay, so one of my final questions, before after this conversation, what do you think La Suspendida has to offer to its audience?
La Suspendida has to offer, first and foremost,
Mm,
a story, a very emotional story, which
mm.
is based on a true story. Um, we didn't talk about this, right?
No,
We
we can
we
still.
can later, but yeah. So it's a story of a woman who, in the real life, was not lucky. She was sick and she died very young. And her doctor took her corpse and practiced necrophilia with it. And the opera, we all wanted to say, no, we don't focus on that guy who did that to her corpse. We want to focus on her. She died too young, and we want to give her a voice,
mm,
and we want to give her power,
mm,
and we want to give her a chance to create a new fate for herself,
mm.
and to give her a platform to express more than just death.
Yeah.
But of course, she died. And the story of La Suspendida happens after she died physically.
Mhm.
And she's in a limbo, in a suspended momentum, because she refuses to join the choir of the death. And she builds this world in the limbo for herself, deciding how she wants to do things, how she wants to deal with that guy who's abusing her corpse, and how to deal with the dead, and how to deal with her new state of in between existence. So, what La Suspendida can offer is a lot of emotion, a lot of questions that you can think about for your own life or everything. It's a story that will in either or the other way move you. I cannot imagine, even if you don't like the music at all, it will move you. You
Yeah.
know, just the story itself, the whole thing. There is this incredibly tragic fate, but
Yeah.
we try to give her the dignity, the drama, everything a woman wants. You know what I mean? When you are, I'm sorry for saying it like this, maybe it's the wrong terminology, but I think every young woman wants to have a momentum in her life where she has a pretty dress, where she has a moment where everybody looks at her, where she feels strong and beautiful and in charge over something. Everybody, yeah, I think not just women, I guess men have that too in a different way, Maria Elena is a woman, and I think since she couldn't live that in her life for a long time, we wanted to give her the chance through our how we would do it,
Mhm.
to live a moment where she is in the middle of everything, where she's
Mm,
in charge, where she's the like the opera singer, she's the star. She is the one who sings the opera, everything.
mm.
And she tells her story, a new story. She wants that La Suspendida is a new story for Maria Elena. We didn't want to tell her old story. We already know it when you read the newspaper articles. But yes, I think La Suspendida is a story, and it's an opportunity offered to think about life in a philosophical way, maybe,
Yeah.
and to think about fate. How can we change the path of our lives and of our fates?
Mhm.
I
Well,
think that, yeah.
you created this world for Maria Elena, which at
Mhm.
the beginning and throughout the whole opera, and by the final song, Lullaby, it took a turn. It gets very emotional, and
Mhm.
I didn't expect that, honestly. But
Mhm.
it's a great way to for all coming together, like closing the cycle of life and death. So she didn't just die tragically and experience all these bad things, but she was dignified in death.
Yes.
She received, she was honored in death, and
Yes, exactly.
that was beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much, because that's exactly what we wanted to that was our main goal, is to give dignity to her tragic story, to give her respect for who she was, not just the corpse that was abused. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
sensational story. No, it's not about this. It's about a woman who deserves dignity, and who deserves her the power over her own fate. You
Mm,
know, like yes. And also, even when at the end, this decision, this acceptance, this, we all look for the same. All human beings, we all want to have, I think we are all looking for that place in our lives where we can say we are at peace with ourselves and with the world around us, and we accept and we are accepted. You know, we can feel acceptance through love,
Mm,
through knowing something really well, um, whatever it takes to feel that kind of feeling. But I think we all look for that, each one of us, no matter how old we are, where we come from. And so I think, yeah, opera is always, it's a celebration of the voice, but it's also a celebration of life, with all the ups and downs, with all the tragedies. It's something that is larger than life as an experience. It's something huge, but we can all make a connection to the story because there is something universal, a universal truth in all of these stories.
yeah,
And for you, it can mean something completely different than for me, depending on who we are, what is our background. But still, everybody can relate because it's a universal topic for all of us. I
yeah,
think that's what makes opera so great. And now that after all I did now, I appreciate opera more than I did when I was studying it. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
like I had to become a bit more mature and a bit maybe less silly to understand the meaning of an opera. Why is it so? Why is it so big? Why is it so moving? Why is it so challenging? Because it's so honest. It's so honest about life and about the tragedies and about the contrasts. Life is big arts, and so is the opera, and so is the story of you, of everybody on this world, but also of Maria Elena. No?
Well, I for one appreciate that you brought this world into metal, into something that I enjoy. It opened up a new world for me
Oh wow.
of music and melodies on all of that. My final question, and
Mhm.
I don't know if a fair question in this case, but if you could relate or assimilate what you have in your mind of La Suspendida with another piece of work that already exists, like a movie, a painting, um, a book,
Wow, that's a
which one will it be and why?
there is one. Look,
Okay.
I have a tattoo on my arm, and it's
Okay.
from a book written by Norman Spinrad. He is known for his most. He also wrote historical book, but he's more known for
Mm,
science fiction stories. And he wrote many incredible books. I think he even wrote some episodes for Star Trek at some point.
mm.
And he's a very, I would say, anarchistic, psychedelic inspired author.
Can you repeat
And
the name, please?
Norman Spinrad.
Okay.
And he wrote one book which is called Child of Fortune. That's my tattoo here.
Mm,
And it's about a young woman in the future who uh, it says there is a rite de passage, so to become who you are meant to be, but you don't know it and your parents will not know it, so you have to travel through space just to find yourself. And it's a young woman. She lived with very happily with her parents, and all of a sudden she's excited. Oh, now I can be with my parents. I can become an adult. Yay! And she's super naive. She spends all her money that the parents gave her for the beginning, and then she has to find her own path with nothing. So she has to find out, what is my talent, who am I, where am I, how can I survive in this world. She doesn't die, so
okay.
spoiler alert. No, it's not part of that story. So it's not about death like with La Suspendida, but it's about a woman who's trying to find her fate. And in this story, um, uh, Norman Spinrad did it like this. You have to give your, at the end of that journey that you do as a so-called child of fortune, before you enter your adult life, you have to choose a name for yourself. So you will not have the name of your parents, but
Great.
you choose your name, you choose your fate based on your talents that you discovered on that journey. And there is one phrase, and that reminds me of La Suspendida very much. And I have it on my arm because I don't ever want to forget it. It says, "May your road rise up to meet you." And I like this so much, this image of there is a path for all of us. And it's while you are walking it, you will find it. You will not see it before, but you will do well. And for me, that was exactly the same with La Suspendida. When I started, I was like, well, how shall I play her? How can I be her on stage? And then I was whenever I struggle in my life, I take up my pullover and I read that and I remember that story. And I was like, man, I just have to start singing, and the more I sing, the more I will grow into Maria Elena. And I think that's for life in general. I really love that image of walking, and while you're walking, you will see your road, the road of your life. And so that's where I have the connection. I love this book. I read it so obsessively. It's really wonderful. I can highly recommend it.
Yeah.
And it's scientific, it's psychedelic. There are some really good momentums in that book, and she's a funny character, like also super naive in the beginning, and she tries her ways and she falls in love here, and she has a tragic love there. And so she's young too, very young. And Maria Elena, when she died, she was also really young. So there are some connections between those two protagonists for me. So if you ask me about if there is an association, this one would be it. Yes.
And perfect association, I will think. That's a powerful quote. I will look for Child of Fortune.
Yes.
In my
No,
mind, it reminded me of a quote often in my head. I don't remember by whom. Perhaps the answer is not insertion, but finding. You know, you will find it along the way. You can
yes,
seek out.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, Andromeda, thank you for your time. I enjoyed this conversation very much.
Thank you so
The
much too
music.
for having us. And
Well, hopefully we can talk in the future about Falte Kama.
oh yes, let's exchange an email about when to schedule.